Texting. 911 to 1 Gillette Place in Foxborough. We are back. Segment 2, IDD from Surfside Beach here in South Carolina, just south of Myrtle Beach. Myrtle, if you. Happy Memorial Day. Thank you to all the vets out there who made the ultimate sacrifice, I might add. This is segment 2. I am the highly questionable one. Very excited my mother was able to do that with us in segment 1. She's a big sports fan, as you now can tell, and now all the good in me that I do have is from her. All the bad in me, well, that's just me being me. Anyway, and speaking of bad, there's one bad mofo out there right now in the NFL who just got released by the Arizona Cardinals. One DeAndre Hopkins, at 30 years old, in the middle of his prime. Teams were interested, but the thing was, the biggest holdup was about the trade package that the Cardinals were going to command and what was left on his contract, which was like $36 million. Cardinals ate 22 of it to get him off the books, get him off the roster when they released him. So he's out there. As they say, the fish is in the water. The question for Patriot Nation is, what is Bill Belichick going to do about it? Because if he expressed interest before, why wouldn't he now? And given you have never given your quarterback, not since the days of Gronk and Brady, a true number one. Edelman is close, but I don't know if he's a real number one. He's close. But the Patriots haven't had a guy like this since Randy Moss, let's be honest, from a talent perspective. And Mac Jones deserves a number one. And you can get 3 years out of this guy. They got Randy Moss at 31 and got 3 productive years out of him. They can certainly get that with this guy. You're going to have to pay him, but they're $13 million under the cap. There is a way to make this work. You can do a signing bonus. There are things they can do. You can drop some of these freaking C-list receivers that aren't going to make the roster anyway and get this. I mean, honestly, given what's been happening with the AFC East, with Miami and Buffalo and now the Jets with the arrival of Aaron Rodgers, Bill Belichick needs to make this move. It's not even a question of want anymore. He needs to make this move. If he makes this move, the Patriots are a contender. And I'm not just talking about for the division. I'm talking about for the conference. They have a top 10 defense. Joel was right about one thing. With the arrival of this cornerback, if he is what they say he is, and he's a 6'1 cornerback, I might add, the Patriots defense, which was already top 10, has top 5 potential. You have a top 5 defense, you're a contender. If you have a quarterback that has anything going on between the ears. And I know Mac Jones does. People want to talk about last year. People keep forgetting that Mac Jones was being led by Matt Patricia and Joe Judge, the 2 worst coaches in the history of the NFL, as far as I'm concerned. Neither one of them has any business being anywhere near an NFL field unless they bought tickets to watch the game. They suck. Both of them. Suck and suck. It's worse than Dumb and Dumber. It's suck and suck. Okay? And if you look at what happened to Jared Goff, if you look what happened to Danny Dimes in New York when Joe Judge was fired, and respectively Goff when Matt Patricia was sent packing last year, one went 9-8, one made the playoffs and won a playoff game. And they were both monumentally better when those two left the building. Mac Jones made the Pro Bowl as a rookie. And then look what happened to him last year. And look who was running the ship or who was calling the shots. You can't judge Mac Jones on last year any more than you could judge Jared Goff on 2 years ago or Danny Dimes for that matter. And Danny Dimes still doesn't have a number one receiver. So, and the same goes for Mac Jones. You look at all these elite quarterbacks. I keep saying this and saying this and saying this, and someday somebody's going to pick up on it. Every great quarterback has a number one. Whether it's a tight end like a Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes has a number one, like Brady had Gronk. Every great quarterback has a number one. The Patriots don't have a number one tight end or a number one receiver. They've got a bunch of 2s and 3s and 3s and 4s. And if they really want to be serious about getting a Super Bowl, they need to make this move. He's out there. He's hungry. And you know, I know that him and O'Brien have a past in Houston, but O'Brien's not calling the shots. Bill Belichick is. O'Brien will do whatever Bill Belichick tells him to do at the end of the day. And if Bill Belichick is smart and not arrogant, smarts, he'll do this. Arrogance will prevent him from doing it. Okay? And if he's arrogant, Pats aren't going to win this division. They may go 12-5. They may come in second. I think they can still do that because I think they've improved the roster enough to do that. And with O'Brien like coordinator, they're going to be better because they can't be any worse. They were 8-9 last year. They were one game from the playoffs last year with those bumbling boobs running the offense into the ground. They went from 15th to 29th. And it wasn't because they didn't have enough talent. It wasn't because they didn't have a good quarterback. It was those two idiots running the show. And again, if you think I'm making that up, look at Detroit 2 years ago and look at the Giants 2 years ago when those two guys were in charge. They both were doormats. They were laughingstocks. Last year, one made the playoffs, one missed it by a game. In 1 year. And the head coaches were fired. There wasn't drastic personnel changes. They got the two bums out of the building, and those two teams turned it around drastically. Logic suggests you can expect a similar response from the Patriots this year. And the Patriots have a better defense than both those teams do. Okay? So the Patriots have a better head coach than both those teams do. So they have to make this move. And this is where Robert Kraft needs to step in and go, look, Bill, I love you, and I want to see you break this record. But I don't want to see you break this record in the middle of another 7-10 campaign. I'd much rather see you break it winning a Super Bowl. Because then it would have meaning. Because then you'd win one without Tom Brady, and then you can stake claim to the greatest coach of all time title. Because right now, in my book, you are not the greatest coach of all time. You were just lucky when Tom Brady was sitting there in the 6th round. And since Dick Rabine made that pick for you, because you didn't make it, Dick Rabine talked Belichick into it. Let's be clear, boys and girls, about who pushed Belichick to make that pick. It wasn't Bill Belichick's just divine. No. If he was so divine, he would have let him. He had Drew Bledsoe in his prime, who was a 4-time Pro Bowler and had been to a Super Bowl and a top 5 defense that had been to the Super Bowl, and they were 5-11 his first year. With all that, Pete Carroll was better with that team than Belichick was. Think about that for a minute, okay? So they need to make this move. Okay, and the fact that Buffalo and Baltimore are kicking the tires on this make it even more so. If you don't get him and one of those two teams does, especially if it's Buffalo, you might as well just pack up and leave now, Bill. You might as well just pack up and leave now, okay? Because honestly, you're not going to win in a passing league without a number 1 receiver. You're not. You might have a defense that'll... They had a top 10 defense the last 2 years. What'd it get them? 1 playoff appearance, 47-17 bum blasting. They've been 500 for 3 years with a top 10 defense each of the last 3 years. That's not enough. Okay? When he went and spent the money 2 years ago, he went and got Hunter Henry, Nelson Aguilar, gone. Kendrick Bourne's still here. Jonnu Smith, gone. He blew all that money, not one Pro Bowler in the mix. And then he missed on DK Metcalf, Deebo Samuel, and the kid in Philly there, Brown, A.J. Brown. They were both in that. All 3 of them were in that draft when he took N'Keal Harry ahead of all of them. Bill Belichick doesn't know what he's doing here. This is a no-brainer, and Robert Kraft needs to make it happen. You spend the money, and you get that guy in Foxborough. And if you do, you are a contender right now. I guarantee they are a contender if they get DeAndre Hopkins. They, I think, are capable of winning 11, 12 games without him because I think their defense is going to be better. Mac Jones is going to be much better, and he's motivated to prove last year was a fluke. The tight end from Miami was a good addition. Juju Smith-Schuster is not washed up at 26, Joel. Nobody's washed up at 26, Joel. You were the one I know that's washed up at 26, Joel. Okay? 26. Okay, please, stop sniffing glue glove, Joel. I mean, unbelievable. Or eating paste, whatever the hell it is you're doing. But there's no way Juju Smith-Schuster, who was the number 2 receiver for a Super Bowl champion last year, is washed up at 26. But he's not a number 1. He can, however, be a very good number 2. How good? Last time he was a true number 2, like last year when it was, because Mahomes was spreading the ball. He had 1,400 yards across from Antonio Brown, or whoever it was, as a number 1. 1,400 yards receiving. If that's not a number 2, I don't know what is. Okay, and he's 26. So Juju Smith-Schuster is not washed up. He's fresh off a Super Bowl ring, and he lauds Belichick for what he does as a coach. So he can't be the only one. Okay? And Judon and all these guys, they're trying to get DeAndre Hopkins needs to end up in Foxborough. The Pats have the most money, and they have, on paper, the best coach. I don't want to hear about the division and how tough it is. Winning a Super Bowl is tough regardless of where you come out of. At some point, you got to run into these teams anyway. So, but if you win that division, does that not toughen you up for a playoff run if you got to go through this gauntlet that the AFC East is shaping up to be? Because right now, the Pats are an 11-12 win team on paper. They really are. No one knows that yet. Okay, but the fact they have a top 10 defense that's going to be top 5, I think Joel's right about that. There's no way a top 5 defense with a competent quarterback is not going to be in the playoffs. And Mac Jones, if nothing else, he's a competent quarterback. Okay, and he will benefit from the subtraction of Patricia and Judge and the addition of O'Brien. O'Brien was a great coordinator at Alabama. It's one thing to have talent, boys and girls. It's another thing to know how to use it. Okay, and there's something to be said for that. O'Brien knows how to use the pieces at his disposal. Joe Judge and Matt Patricia wouldn't know. You don't know nothing. They know less than nothing. And the fact that the Philadelphia Eagles hired Patricia does not bode well for the Eagles, does it, Joel? Okay. But at the end of the day, the Patriots have to make this move. If Robert Kraft is serious about competing for a Super Bowl, they have to make this move. He is the biggest fish out there. He's never won a ring. He's hungry. And I got news for you. I know the quarterbacks he listed, about all the guys he wants to play with. Okay? All those guys have already had number ones. They've all had them. Except for Lamar. But Lamar now has Odell Beckham Jr. They're not going to go after him. They don't have the money to go after him. The Patriots have the most money, and they have the owner, and they have the coach. Okay? And that is what needs to happen. Make this move, Bill Belichick. Okay? Make this move, and you might just get me back on your side. But make this damn move. Because if you don't make this move, and God forbid he ends up in Buffalo, I will be leading the torches to One Gillette Place. They will be coming after you in limousines, in droves, in trucks, in buses. They'll be at the gates calling for your head. And I will make sure of that because honestly, this is the last straw for me. You get DeAndre Hopkins. Unless he fails a medical exam and can't physically play, you better get this guy. That's the only excuse I'm taking. He physically can't, whatever injuries he sustained, he can't hold up anymore. Okay? That better be the only reason they don't get him. If they lose him out to more money or they gave more when the Pats could have given it, that's on Bill Belichick. And you will be held accountable for that. Mac Jones needs a legit number one. This guy, since 2013, is first in receptions. And actually, he has a drop rate of 1%. 1% last year on over 300 targets. He dropped the ball 1% of the time. That's the best in the NFL. He's number 2 in yards in the last 10 years at 11,000. Number 3 in touchdowns, 71. This is that dude, and he's 30. You can get 3 years out of him at least. And if you're going to spread the ball around, you might get 4 or 5 out of him because the Pats do have other weapons. But the problem is they have 2s and 3s. They need a 1. This dude's a 1. I am pleading with you, Bill Belichick. If you do nothing else, go get this guy. If you get this guy and he bombs, I won't blame you for that. Because you have to go and make this move. So I am imploring you on behalf of Patriot Nation, go get this guy. Okay? Don't rely on your defense to stop these guys. You are not successful against Josh Allen unless Tom Brady is your quarterback. Okay? They've won the last 5 in a row. Brady's gone. You haven't beaten him. But we beat him one time in a monsoon when they couldn't throw up in Buffalo. That doesn't count. Okay? The 47-17 bum blasting you got in the playoffs, that counted. Okay? You need to fight fire with fire. This dude is fire. Okay? So go get him and get back in this thing. And if you do that, I promise you, okay, the Patriots are going to be, they're going to have a shot this year if they get him. Right now, they don't have a number one. And I love Tyquan Thornton, the Baylor Bullet, as I call him, and he's got a lot of potential. But I'd love to see these two out on the field together. That would be scary. Okay, I'd love to see that. And Ramondre Stevenson behind Mac Jones. I would love to see that show, especially with that defense. Okay, with Uche and with Judon, and that cornerback Gonzalez they just drafted. I would love to see that show. That'd be worth paying the price to see. But you got to go get this guy. Stop fucking around and go get this guy and get serious. Because until you get a number one receiver, you're not a serious contender. You can win 12. The Vikings won, and they had no defense. The Vikings won 13 games, got to the second round, but had no defense, and eventually, because they didn't, they were done. You have the defense. Go get this guy. Go get this guy and make yourself a contender for the Super Bowl right now this year, because if you do that, you are. Okay? And I won't blame how guys get hurt. That's not on you, but you got to get the pieces in the building. That's the missing piece. Go get him and stop fucking around. That's my last plea of a call for help for you, Bill. You don't do this. Enjoy the game tonight, boys and girls. Go Celtics. I am predicting Miami, but I am rooting for the Celtics. And yes, Joel, I would love to be wrong. I'll say it again. I just don't think I am. Okay? But if Boston plays defense like they did in game 4 and 5, they got a shot. Big if. You guys enjoy your Memorial Day weekend. We will see you back up in the SAC next week at some point. The Redoubtable One will be back, and hopefully the fixture will be there as well, because I want his update, or his as a fan, true fan of the Eagles, what he thinks of this Matt Patricia hiring. I'd love to hear it. Until then, boys and girls, happy Memorial Day, and we will see you in about 3 days. Cheers.